Hey everyone! Today we're going to flip through the pages of the ultimate family album, the human one. And let me tell you, our family tree is way more crowded and a lot weirder than you probably ever imagined.
For the longest time, this was pretty much the story we told ourselves. That we were the pinnacle, the end result of this long, straight march of progress. A lonely solo act on the big evolutionary stage. Yeah, well, turns out that story is completely wrong. The reality is that for most of our time on this planet, we have had company. Lots of it. Our family tree isn't some neat straight line. It's more like a tangled, busy bush. So let's open up the album and meet some of our long-lost relatives.
All right, so let's start at the very beginning, back in Africa, with the very first members of our genus, Homo. These are the trailblazers, the ones who really set the stage for every single human who came after. First up, we've got Homo habilis, and they're nicknamed the handyman for a really important reason. This species, living over 2 million years ago, was the first to consistently make and use stone tools. And look, that wasn't just some small step. This was the dawn of technology itself.
And here's where you can really see that amazing link between the brain and the hands. A bigger brain, we're talking around 600 cubic centimeters, gave them the smarts to create these simple but revolutionary Oldowan tools. These were basically just sharp flakes of rock, but they were perfect for butchering meat. This was the moment we started to shape our world instead of just being shaped by it.
Okay, next up in our family album is Homo erectus, the upright man. You can think of these guys as the great explorers of the family. They weren't content to just stay in Africa. Oh no, they had global ambitions.
And wow, what a monumental leap forward this was. Their brain size nearly doubled that of habilis, which let them create way more sophisticated tools like that iconic teardrop-shaped Acheulean hand axe. But the real game changer? They harnessed fire. And this wasn't just for getting warm. It meant protection from predators. It meant they could cook their food, and that unlocked the energy needed to fuel that even bigger brain and to power their incredible journey out across the globe.
Now let's turn the page in our album, because this is where things get really weird and wonderful. We're going to meet the island specialists, species that evolved in total isolation and just go to show how incredibly adaptable our genus could be, leading to some very surprising results.
And I mean, it does not get more surprising than this. Meet Homo floresiensis. They were discovered on the Indonesian island of Flores, and everybody nicknamed them the Hobbit. And for a very good reason. They were tiny. This is a textbook example of something called island dwarfism, where a species literally shrinks over generations when it's stuck in an isolated place with limited resources.
Okay, and this is where the story gets mind-bendingly complex. Just look at that date. They were around as recently as 60,000 years ago. That's practically yesterday in evolutionary time. Our own direct ancestors were sharing the planet with them, and despite having a brain smaller than a modern chimp's, they were hunting, making tools, and absolutely thriving. This just completely shatters that old-school idea of a simple ladder of human progress. And get this, the Hobbit wasn't a one-off. On another island, this time in the Philippines, we found Homo luzonensis. And then back in South Africa, there was Homo naledi, another small-brained species that lived surprisingly recently and might have even been burying its dead, a behavior we used to think was uniquely ours. The big takeaway here? The ancient world was packed with many different kinds of humans.
Okay, deep breaths. This next chapter of the album brings us face to face with our closest known relatives. And these aren't some distant cousins from millions of years ago. No, these are the ones we met, the ones we lived alongside, and the ones whose legacy is literally written into our DNA today.
And of course, we have to talk about the most famous of all, the Neanderthals. But first things first, please forget the brutish, hunched-over caveman stereotype. Just wipe it from your mind. That is not who they were, not even close.
The real evidence tells a totally different story. Their brains were, on average, a little bit larger than ours. Yep, larger. They made complex tools, they buried their dead with care, they looked after the sick and the elderly in their groups, and they even made art and jewelry. They were intelligent, capable, and highly cultured people. They were our equals. So this brings us to this one absolutely incredible moment in time. Picture this. Around 50,000 years ago, this planet was ridiculously crowded with humans. You had our species, Homo sapiens, spreading out from Africa. You had the Neanderthals all across Europe and Asia. You had the mysterious Denisovans, a species we know about almost entirely from a few fragments of DNA, over in Asia. And you still had tiny humans like Homo floresiensis thriving out in Indonesia. That's at least 4, maybe more, different human species sharing the Earth at the exact same time.
So this just begs the biggest question of all, right? When our ancestors finally came face to face with these other humans, what actually happened? Was it all-out war? Did we just replace them?
Well, the answer, which modern genetics revealed to us, is so much more intimate and complicated than that. This number you're looking at right here, 1 to 2%, that represents the average amount of Neanderthal DNA that is carried today by every single person on Earth who has ancestry outside of Africa. And that reveals a really profound truth. They didn't just vanish into thin air. Through interbreeding, their story became our story. A piece of them literally lives on in billions of us today. A ghostly echo right there in our own genetic code.
And all of this brings us to the final, and maybe the most mysterious chapter in the whole family album, our own. How did we, Homo sapiens, become the last human species standing?
Well, our story starts in Africa, maybe 300,000 years ago, and for a long, long time, we were just one human type among many. But then, armed with what might have been uniquely complex language, symbolic culture, and an incredible ability to cooperate, we started to spread. And by about 30,000 years ago, we were alone. Our survival wasn't a sure thing. It wasn't inevitable. We're just the last branch left on this very, very complex tree.
Ultimately, I think this is the key takeaway from our whole family album. Our identity isn't this one single thing. It's a mosaic. It's built from the contributions, the adaptations, and even the genes of all these different humans who came before us. Which leaves us all with a final, pretty thought-provoking question. We are the sole survivors of this grand, multi-million-year-long experiment in what it means to be human. Looking forward, what will our chapter in this incredible family story actually look like?